This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? How do they do that? Well, Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, and planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. So travel smarter and spend less. That's the key with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Armchair-Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com. Hey guys, welcome to Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host. And I'm just going to do a really quick short intro before we get into today's episode. It's an older episode, one of my very first from about 5 years ago, so please do excuse some of the production. I did it myself, not one of our talented producers, so that's why, and I was learning as I go. I'm a big believer in that. Just go for it. You'll figure it out. Anyway, none of that really matters because it's an amazing story. It features Dylan Thuras, who is the co-founder of Atlas Obscura. I love these guys. Check it out if you haven't. Atlas Obscura is all about showcasing travel curiosities and hidden wonders, things that you're definitely not going to find in a travel brochure, the kind of places you have to look for. But when you find them, you're going to want to tell all your friends about it when you get home. So the title of this episode is about Dylan's journey in search of South America's hidden wonders. And he finds some amazing ones, from the everlasting lightning storm, which does sound like something out of a Marvel movie, but it is real. It's in Venezuela. And also the Last Incan Bridge, a river the color of rainbows, and lots more fascinating and amazing and wondrous things like that. I also want to give a quick shout out to Atlas Obscura podcast listeners. Dylan and I are doing a bit of an ad swap for each other's shows, which is very kind of him because he gets way more downloads than me. So I wanted to put his episode top of the feed to find when you arrive. So welcome to the show. Thank you for coming. If you like travel and adventure, we're going to get on well. But enough of me for now because the adventure is about to begin. Are you ready? Let's go.
The idea was like so many guidebooks were missing the things that we thought were interesting, right? So that might be an abandoned ruin or a outsider art project or a weird little museum that's like dedicated to wax anatomical figures, right? These things that when you see them, you're like, this is incredible. How is this not like the thing everyone's talking about? And so we wanted to kind of gather that stuff and just kind of broaden what gets to be considered like a worthy attraction, like the thing that you're going to actually leave, you know, your trip saying that was the greatest, craziest, most interesting thing I did. And then I think as we did that, you know, we realized really immediately, and part of this comes from my childhood. My parents took me on road trips all around the Midwest, which is where I'm from. You know, we went to kind of normal places like Mount Rushmore, but we also went to like these classic Midwestern roadside things like the Corn Palace and Wall Drug. And there's a place in Wisconsin that I cite as like one of my Atlas places, like a very influential place called the House on the Rock, which is unbelievable, wild collection of all sorts of stuff. It's almost impossible to explain because it's just a singular location, but it has sculpture of a squid fighting a whale the size of the Statue of Liberty inside of this building. It has a hallway that looks like it goes on forever. It has the world's largest indoor carousel. It's just unbelievably wild, unique, artistic creation in the middle of kind of, you know, a small town Wisconsin. And so I think I'd always been really attracted to that kind of stuff. And the thing you realize is like that stuff can be really close at hand. The idea of what a wonder is has nothing to do really with its geographical location. We kind of always assume that the amazing things are, you know, going to be far away, that you have to travel, you know, halfway around the world. But there is so much so close to every person that has that kind of incredible story. And not all of them are as obvious as like a
statue of a squid fighting a whale the size of the Statue of Liberty. Man, I have got to go and see that one day. And by the way, just for some fun, other weird Midwest attractions include the world's largest ball of twine, the world's largest glob of paint, the Spam Museum, the Nuclear Waste Adventure Trail, and a 42-foot tall UFO landing port. Because, can you imagine if finally a sentient interstellar intelligence made the unfathomably long journey across the stars to come and see us, and then we're like, you know what, Bob, there's nowhere to park. Let's just go somewhere else. No idea what they're drinking out there in the Midwest, but I want some. And for Dylan, those moments of childhood Midwestern road trip madness had a profound effect. They were the seeds of this groundbreaking idea that would later become a worldwide phenomenon. That was the start, but it really came into its own with, as should maybe be expected, a mystery.
There was a blog on the internet called The Proceedings of the Athanasius Kircher Society. And it was this weird blog written anonymously, but I loved it. It covered kind of these esoteric wonders from history, sometimes places around the world. And it was really in line with the kind of stuff that I found myself writing about, gravitating towards. So at one point, this blog put up a post that said, basically, I want to put on an event. Who wants to help me plan this? And I wrote in and said, I really like what you do. I'm interested in helping you put this on. Josh was the anonymous author behind this blog.
That's Josh Furr. He's the co-founder of Atlas Obscura along with Dylan, and he's also who travels with Dylan through South America on this trip. And Athanasius Kircher, by the way, was a 17th century polymath responsible for such inventions as the cat piano, the speaking trumpet, and the vomiting statue. He was before his time. Can you imagine what YouTube would do with him if he was alive today? I'll be sharing all this craziness on my social media, so do check that out. Anyway, Josh and him got together and magic started happening.
So we did this other project where we put on this real world night of kind of wonders. Real life Rain Man, a guy named Kim Peek, was there along with his father and did kind of feats of memory. This guy, Colonel Joe Kittinger, who for years held the world record for longest free fall. It's part of like early Air Force experiments. He jumped out of a plane. He was there to talk about that. We did this crazy recreation of a constructed language called Soul, which can be played on instruments or spoken through color.
That is amazing. That sounds like the sort of thing that would land on a 42-foot UFO landing port in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. But I looked it up. It's real, and it was created by a 19th century French music teacher called Jean-Francois Soudre in an attempt to build a universal language out of music, which is very cool and very admirable. Anyway, the event was a huge success. They sold out the venue. It got written up in the New Yorker, and they realized they just really enjoyed working together and wanted to do more. And that's when the magic happened.
We started talking about travel and kind of like why there wasn't a great travel resource for the kinds of things we were interested in. And so we came up with this project to create a user-generated guide to the world's hidden wonders, to all the things that sort of aren't covered in normal travel. People get caught in these like story loops, right? You know, when it hits this peak and it gets told, and it is amazing, and people go and they bring back those stories, but then it creates kind of these narrow channels that everyone starts to fall into. And it becomes a shame because it starts to degrade the experience for the people who live there. It starts to degrade the experience for the traveler. And the thing is that the world is big and there is like a lot to explore. And so the more you can kind of create these alternate tributaries, these things that take people on different paths, I think the more magical the world becomes, the more choices people have, and kind of just, it helps tourism do something, I think, positive in the world, which is kind of distribute people to places they might not otherwise have gone and kind of disperse the negative impacts of tourism and also disperse the positive impacts of tourism.
So Atlas Obscura started as a bit of fun, but it became about something far more important. It became about positive travel, because travel at its best can help empower communities and protect ecosystems. But it can also help us. It can inspire us to look beyond the obvious, to look for the world's hidden wonders, and yes, to go and look at giant statues of squids fighting whales. And when we do that, as we'll see, something else happens even more fundamental. It changes the way we see the world. But let's get to South America first. So Dylan and Josh did this huge party. They set up the website. Atlas Obscura was born, but they hadn't actually spent that much time together. They'd fallen in love with these eccentric wonders independently, but they'd never gone out into the world to actually look for them as a team. It was time for an utterly eccentric and amazing South American road trip.
The idea was to go and find a bunch of stuff that was kind of undercovered, that had an incredible story to be told. We did it all in a month. We went to Colombia, Peru, we went to Venezuela, Bolivia. It was like a breakneck thing. And yeah, we saw some really wild stuff.
They did see some wild stuff, and that's because they went looking for things that were out of the ordinary, the crazy off the beaten track stuff that no one else was interested in, the stuff that was glittering but in the shadows. They went looking for the hidden wonders of South America, and it was one epic ride.
So the first big place we wanted to see was in Colombia. So we stopped by the Cathedral of Salt, but we were really there to go to see the Caño Cristales, which is especially back then, still kind of in an uncertain political state. But it's this kind of famous river that turns these beautiful, incredible colors each season because of the underwater plant life that grows there, and they sort of turn pink and green and yellows. And so that involved taking a little prop plane across Colombia and then driving way out to kind of the middle of nowhere, what felt like the middle of nowhere. Nothing is the middle of nowhere because someone is everywhere. And then just journeying around this river and trying not to get caught out there during a storm and get washed away, which kind of almost did happen. I remember at one point I was shooting these videos for this, so that was my role in the journalism, was producing videos. But I had all my camera gear and my other stuff on my head as we're walking through these chest-high rivers, basically trying to get back to camp before things got dicier, which we did, and it was fine. But that was a hasty retreat.
I suppose if you're going to get washed away and drowned in a river, it might as well be the most beautiful one in the world, which it really is known as that. And it's also known as the river that ran away from paradise, which gives you an idea of the kind of color and spectacle of it. But while they were doing that, they came across something far crazier.
We had heard that there were some villages and valleys in Colombia where kids still use this zip line system that was created by loggers in the 1950s, because there are these towns that exist on these enormous rifts, these huge valleys where it takes 6 hours basically to walk down one side and up the other. But on either side is the town and the school, or things that people want to get between. So loggers basically made their own DIY zipline system. They a couple of concrete blocks, steel cabling, your own homemade zipline equipment. You brought your own stuff. So you brought your little metal roller and your rope harness, which you just tied up yourself, and your brake, because if you didn't have a brake, you went flying into the other side. And we talked to some kids who basically used it to get back and forth. I tried the zip line. It is a heck of a way to go back and forth to school.
Oh my God. Can you imagine if that was your commute to school? Not the big yellow school bus, not the number 49 of your mum's car, a high-powered DIY zipline straight out of Willy Wonka meets the Jungle Book.
It was wild. You go really fast. When you put on the brake at the end, there's smoke flying off of this little Y-shaped stick with a piece of metal in it that helps you. And, I think it's some combination of terrifying and a failure of state infrastructure, and really, really exciting and delightful for a kid to think about.
Okay, not Willy Wonka. This is more Bear Grylls. Can you survive the commute to school? And the answer is, if you're a kid, who cares? This is way too much fun. But actually, it is really dangerous. They're flying over a 1,200-foot abyss. And Dylan was, in the words of the article Josh wrote about it for Slate magazine afterwards, shaking and pale and seemed to be on the verge of vomiting. small price to pay for getting to be, for just a few death-defying moments, a real-life Indiana Jones. And that wasn't the only indie moment of this trip either, but more on that later. Next up was Venezuela.
We went to Venezuela to see the everlasting lightning storm, this place where basically it's got more lightning there than almost anywhere else in the world. So like 250 nights out of the year, there's a silent lightning storm that happens above this region.
The everlasting lightning storm. That just sounds so cool. It sounds like something more out of a Marvel movie than real life. And although they say lightning never strikes twice, here on Lake Maracaibo, that's a lie. This little inlet of the Caribbean Sea holds the Guinness World Record for the most lightning strikes per square kilometer, 250 a year on average. And they're happening all the time. Thousands of flashes an hour, 10 hours a night, 260 days a year. It's like watching the sky transformed into one of those plasma globes that you put your hands on in the Science Museum. And although they didn't have to quite battle Thuras or anything like that, they didn't exactly have an easy ride either.
And then the trip out to the everlasting lightning storm had its own complications because it took us a while to get there. We had to drive kind of far out. And by the time we arrived at this Lake Maracaibo, it had gotten dark. And the plan had been to go out on the lake to this little island in the lake and stay the night there, sort of underneath this lightning storm. But the fishermen that we had sort of planned to meet up and have take us out basically said, we don't want to do it because it's now gotten dark and we're afraid of bandits potentially, like attacking the boats. There was some issue with like local kind of river piracy. And the solution to this was basically said, well, we don't want to do it, but we have these teenagers who are like willing to basically do this trip. And when we were like, yeah, but like that doesn't solve the bandit problem, right? And they were like, no, it's fine. Like the teenagers will all have guns. And we were like, okay.
That's fine, I'll pass. Like, if I'm going to get into a gunfight with a load of Venezuelan river pirates, I'd rather the people protecting me weren't trigger-happy teenagers who are too young to have any real sense of their own mortality. So they didn't go to the island, but they did see the everlasting storm, and it was spectacular. It's estimated that about 1.2 million strikes hit the lake annually, making it by far the most electric place on the planet. Next up was Bolivia, which is an incredible country, home to the famous salt flats, of course, but also more Atlas Obscura type things, like the North Yungas Death Road, which makes walking on tight ropes seem overly safe, the Witches Market, something out of like a Hogwarts nightmare, and my favorite, Cholita Wrestling, where tough-as-nails ladies in top hats and dresses beat the living crap out of each other, for real. I mean, crazy, all of it. But strangely amazing too. And then from there they went on to Peru, and this is where it gets really Indiana Jones.
Not far from Machu Picchu in the other direction is the Last Incan Bridge, which I think is like one of the greatest places in the world. Visually, it's like the quintessential Indiana Jones looking bridge. It's this hanging suspension bridge, and it is woven entirely out of this grass or kind of hay-like material that grows in the mountains. And sort of that in and of itself is spectacular. But the thing that really makes it special to me is that every year the local towns, the 4 local towns, basically come together and they cut down the old bridge, which starts to rot because it's really just made of grass and eventually, wears out. So the bridge sort of has a natural season and cycle. And they cut it down and they build a new bridge. They weave a new bridge together. They cut down all of this grass and spend basically a week, this big festival, weaving this grass into ropes and the ropes into these big sort of cables. And then, before they cut down the other bridge, they walk across it and string the main ropes. And so even though every year the bridge is new, it is this tie back to the Incan Empire, because this is how this bridge has been made every year since like the height of the Incan roadway system. And to sort of see this thing that's been this like maintained to generation after generation, recreated this spectacular piece of engineering, frankly. I mean, it's a real unbelievable feat of engineering. When the Europeans arrived and saw it, they were terrified to cross it because they hadn't really seen suspension bridges like this. And it was the largest single span bridge, in the world. So this idea of crossing this swinging rope bridge was just absolutely horrifying to these, early conquistadors. But the bridges are incredibly strong. I mean, they can hold 50 people. There are these real feats of fiber engineering, which is obviously part of what the Incan Empire really was built around. So I just think it's incredible.
The Incans are incredible. At its peak, their empire stretched from the capital Cusco in southern Peru across the western edge of the Andes, from Colombia in the north through Ecuador, Bolivia, and Chile to the tip of Argentina in the south. They flourished for little more than a century, but in that brief flash, they managed to construct a road network of more than 14,000 miles, subjugate over 10 million people speaking more than 30 different languages, and became the largest civilization of its time anywhere in the world. And they were damn good at building things too. But all of that's just background. I know what you're really thinking. Did he cross it? Damn right he did.
That was the first thing we did. We went back and forth across that thing, and it was towards the end of its cycle, so it was a little bit dodgy because what happens is it starts to slant and shift, and all the little sticks that make up the walkway of the bridge start to kind of slide in it. So it's like I've got some really fun. I've got great video footage of walking across that bridge, and whenever I need to try and show my adventurous bona fides, that's my go-to.
Indie, eat your heart out. And by the way, I will put up videos of all this stuff on the webpage and social media. So if you want to see Dylan wobbling across this crazy bridge, holding on very, very tightly, do go and check that out. So after the Incan Bridge, they did a lot of other cool stuff. They visited Calap, a vast ruined fortress known as the Machu Picchu of the north. They went hunting for giant snakes in the Amazon. But the highlight was Gokta Falls.
The story we wanted to tell about Gokta was that until 2006, no one had heard of Gokta or was traveling to it. Like no one. The waterfall had this kind of bad reputation or superstitious reputation, right? There was this idea, apparently someone disappeared or died at the base of the waterfall. And it created this idea that there was kind of like an evil spirit or an evil mermaid at the bottom of these falls.
Wait, an evil mermaid? I didn't even know that was a thing. So I looked it up, and apparently Disney got it wrong again. And aside from the sirens who love nothing more than drowning sailors, the original Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid didn't marry the prince and live happily ever after. Actually, she stabbed him in the heart and bathed in his blood before disintegrating into sea foam. So yeah, it's a thing. And yeah, the locals were understandably worried about stepping on her toes, or fins, or whatever. So they didn't go there at all. They ignored it. Until back in 2005, an engineer called Stefan Zimmendorf, who'd been working on a water project in the Amazon nearby, happened upon it, came back the next year with surveying equipment, and measured it to be 2,531 feet from its top to the pool below, twice the height of the Empire State Building. Evil mermaid or not, people started paying attention.
Depending on how you measure it, Gokta Falls is sometimes considered the third tallest waterfall in the world or the fifth tallest waterfall in the world. So it kind of comes down, has a top pool, which we weren't able to get to. But we went down to the base of the second falls. And, it's such a tall waterfall that it sort of does the same thing like an Angel Falls does, where it starts to just turn into mist and kind of drift away as it comes down. But, at the bottom, there is kind of a pool of water. And even getting within 100 meters, you're in the spray, you hear the sound. It's like an intense hike to get out there. So you kind of you put in the work, you're sweating, then you arrive, and it's beautiful.
It is. It's easily one of the most spectacular waterfalls on the planet, a two-tier cascade plummeting from the high jungle like some fabled kingdom, 15 times higher than Niagara Falls. A drop so high that the water disintegrates into mist before it even hits the ground. Screw the evil mermaids, screw the cursed. The locals realize not only is this waterfall incredibly beautiful, it's also a huge opportunity because suddenly people started coming, travelers started coming to see this incredible sight that no one had ever heard of before.
So suddenly this town basically gets put on the map. And the really kind of lovely postscript to this story is that what happened is it meant that now that they were not just some nowhere town with some random waterfall, but a town with a top 5, waterfall. And so now there's a bunch of, guides and folks who take people out there. And it brought in some of that infrastructure and attention from the government that wasn't there. And so, so it's all complex, but I really believe in the power of travel to preserve wonders in the world and to improve the lives and livelihoods of people. It's an incredibly powerful economic force.
And that's what Atlas Obscura is all about. It's a delicate balancing act, of course, but if you do it right, travel can be a force for good. It can bring economic opportunity to some of the poorest places on the planet. It can help keep traditional cultures alive where they would otherwise die out. And it's a crucial aspect of how wildlife conservation is done today, especially in Africa, helping to protect some of the most critical endangered species on the planet. Check out Praveen Momin's episode about mountain gorillas for a good example of that and a great story. But for Dylan, Gokta Falls represents more than that too.
It's just a good example of talking about wonders in your own backyard. The residents of Gokta had this kind of life-changing world-scale wonder in their own backyard, but for all kinds of reasons, they weren't able to see it. And I think that for me has always been a metaphor for how we all live. Like we all live at the base of Gokta Falls. We all live surrounded, looking at incredible wonders, but we don't, until we can change our frame of mind or be willing to see things in new lights, we're not able to see them like that, and it takes kind of that myth making and storytelling to help make that transition.
We all live at the base of Gokta Falls. We are all surrounded by wonders, all kinds of amazing things and magic and mystery, but we can't see them. And that's because wonder is a state of mind, not a place. It's a way of being, a way of going through the world. The quote that opens the book Atlas Obscura is by Abraham Joshua Heschel. It says, "The beginning of our happiness lies in understanding that life without wonder is not worth living. Wonder is what makes us who we are. It drives us to explore, question, and connect. It is the pure joy of being alive. But we must nourish it for it to thrive."
We chose that quote because I think this idea of wonder is really important to both Josh and I. It takes on for us, both of us, a kind of spiritual meaning, like a spiritual significance. A life filled with wonder is a life filled with meaning and with curiosity. And it has a lot more to do with how you form meaning in your life, how you go about finding the magic in the world, right? We all have these experiences where, whether it's looking at the moon through a telescope for the first time. I just looked at the moon through the telescope for the first time in, 20 years and was like, holy shit, it's that's a real place with a lot of texture. And these moments of realizing that the world we're in is not mundane, but in fact deeply magical, and that the problem of recognizing that magic lies not with the world, but with us. And it is our job to turn ourselves into vessels of recognizing that magic. And that's where talking about the storytelling that you do to yourself comes in. It's finding ways to engage with that beauty, that magic, that wonder is what being a traveler is. It is what being, I think, someone who takes a lot of joy in the world is. And so, it sounds a little bit harsh, but I guess to say a life without wonder is to say it's a life without meaning. It's a life without kind of the belief in the transformative beauty of this like world we all live on and share. And so, yeah, it holds very deep for both Josh and I. And I think it's what we kind of hope to find when we go traveling, just to engage with what makes it wondrous.
I'm just going to repeat what Dylan said. The problem of recognizing that magic lies not with the world, but with us. And it is our job to turn ourselves into vessels of recognizing that magic. That is so well said. I absolutely love that. And it really echoes what I say also at the end of every show. The more you look for wonder in the world, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who you are. But that's not always easy.
Wonder in the superficial way is cheap, right? Like you can go on the internet and you can see all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, wow, so much. But that's not really, it's not the same as creating a meaningful sense of awe around something, whether that something is some aspect of nature, the natural world, or science, something, the wonder of the cosmos. Real wonder comes from deep contemplation. And the world it's hard to find the space for that kind of deep contemplation in our world because it is a busy place, it is a noisy place, and to make the space for that deeper personal sense of wonder, you have to really set out to do it. And whether you're doing it as a traveler or in your own backyard, you kind of have to cultivate that space. And I think it's actually harder to cultivate in some ways in a world that's so filled with this kind of like cheap dose of fast phone wonder. But the more you can find space for that deeper wonder, the communing with the natural world and the deeper world, I think the more your life has meaning and the easier it is to find the good in the world.
What was once our birthright has become a weekend luxury. Modern life, that relentless drive towards success when every second is filled with information, when the stars are replaced with TVs and mountains are seen only through computer screens, has swelled our egos and diminished our world. But the good news is, and what this quest was really all about, is that wonder is inside us every time we look in awe at the world and realize that we are a part of that world too. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you for taking us on this quest, this amazing journey to discover the hidden wonders of South America. And thank you for all the work you do. Atlas Obscura is an incredible website and book, and I urge you to go and check it out. Just head over to atlasobscura.com and follow their social media at Atlas Obscura. Finally, I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for helping to spread this message of love for the outdoors and unity and positivity. Thank you for being a part of this community. Your support really does mean the world to me. Now, I usually end with that catchphrase. I've mentioned it a couple of times already in the show. So I'm going to end with something different today. Earlier, I told you that wonder is fine dining for the soul. So my advice to you is explore, dream, and feed your spirit well. Dare to be truly alive.
Quick question. Do you want travel tips from people who have actually been there?
Our show is co-hosted by Tim Johnson, an award-winning travel journalist who's been to more than 145 countries around the world. And I'm David Brody, the other co-host who's been travel podcasting for 20 years while traveling to 50-plus countries around the world.
In about 10 or 20 minutes per show, we break down a destination with the kind of insight you usually only get from long guidebooks or hours of research.
So if you want expert advice, zero fluff, and travel inspiration that you can actually use, search for Travel in 10 wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also find us at boyescape.com.
Hi, I'm Pauline Fromer, host of the Fromer's Travel Podcast. We post new episodes weekly, detailing the kinds of money-saving tips and cultural insights that will make your trips richer without making you significantly poorer. We do so by interviewing real travel experts like TV host Samantha Brown, Fromer's authors from around the globe, and such public figures as Free Solo's Alex Honnold. It's a fun travel party. I hope you can join us.